Joining me now is Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He's an Iraq war vet who serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. Happy New Year. I haven't had a chance to see you.
You too.
What information do you have about what Secretary Pompeo told me was an imminent threat on Americans overseas?
Well, nothing different than you yet. This happened last night, so I'm sure we'll find out more. They said they want to let Congress know. I'm sure they will. We usually have briefings with things like this. But look, if anybody is doubting whether there was imminent intelligence of something that was going to happen, just look at the last week. Stuff had already happened, right? The breaching of the U.S. base, the attack on American contractors and an American base, we know, directed by Iranian proxies and those militias. So obviously Soleimani had a say in it. So the idea that there would be something coming up soon is not really that far-fetched. And you think about it, and I ask this question rhetorically. Tell me one time the U.S. has ever responded to Iran and its provocations. I can't think of one in any major way, but I can think back 30 years of constant Iranian provocations, including 600 dead Americans. And so when we respond, not by targeting 100 people operating a surface-to-air battery, but by targeting the man that has been driving this agenda from Iran for 20 years in the region, I think it was the right move. Will there be escalation? Yes, but the escalation is not on our part. We're finally responding to continued provocations by Iran.
Will there be escalation? Yes, you said. Will there be a threat to American lives because of this?
Yeah, look, on the short term, this is an inflammation because when you ignore an infection coming in and then you finally begin taking the medicine for it, it stings when you put it on, right? It's going to hurt. But in the long term, it's what makes you safer. For 20 years, driving this agenda, this expansionist agenda of Iran, which is responsible for 500,000 dead Syrians, 50,000 children, a destabilized government in Lebanon, an overthrown government in Yemen, 600 dead Americans in Iraq, so much that the Iraqis are protesting against the Iranian involvement. There could be some inflammation in the short term, but if you continue to ignore it, it's going to be long-term far more dangerous than what we're going to see maybe in the next few hours.
What possible Iranian response concerns you most?
Well, I mean, it could be anything. There's Iranian sympathizers pretty much in many locations around the world, softer targets. We know what those possibilities are. I don't need to spell them out for them. But also, I want you to think of something interesting, too. The Israelis strike Iran all the time in Syria and elsewhere. They don't get responded to because Iran knows they're going to respond harder, and they know that if it provocates to a bigger, that the U.S. will come into play.
But Israel has
never.
There
be attacks? Sure.
Israel has never responded by killing essentially the second most powerful man in Iran. No one has. This is uncharted waters here. We all agree. This is something we have not seen before, and we simply don't know at this point how the Iranians will respond. France, said this morning, a French spokesperson said the world is less safe today, not because the French like General Soleimani, but because they're concerned about the destabilizing effect in the region. And this is something that will interest you in particular. You've been very critical, or were very critical, of the U.S. withdrawal from northern Syria, for instance, because you think it jeopardizes the fight against ISIS. I have a hard time seeing over the next 6 months how the U.S. maintains its military presence in Iraq, even. The Iraqi Prime Minister Abdul al-Mahdi came out today and said this is a gross violation of Iraqi sovereignty and a violation of the U.S. agreement to station troops in Iraq. So what happens if the U.S. loses its military presence there? How does that affect the fight against ISIS, for instance?
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with you, and I think that's where kind of these next steps are going to be very important. Keep in mind, Secretary Pompeo on your show said that there have been private conversations. Public and private statements are far different. Keep in mind, the Iraqi people have actually been rising up against Iranian involvement. So you're going to see protests in Tehran. You're going to see protests in Baghdad. They're going to be driven by a government or Iranian purpose to do it. Governments can actually organize protests really quickly. So when you guys report 10,000 people on the streets of Tehran, it's really easy when you're the government to gin that up. What you're not seeing, because the government won't let you, is the counter-protest. So yes, it's going to be a difficult decision over the next 6 months. But ultimately, if Iraq is going to consistently want to be a client state of Iran, maybe we have to do something different. And I think the Iraqi people are showing us that that's in fact not what they want.
What level of assurance do you have or confidence do you have that the Trump administration has planned for today, for the day 2, day 3, day 4 contingencies after such a major operation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, this happened last night. I haven't talked to anybody in the administration. I certainly hope they have. It's going to depend on when did they get the intelligence that there was a reason to go after Soleimani because of impending attacks. If it was an immediate thing, obviously that is something that pops up and you have to go through those next steps now. If it was something that's happened over time or has been a consideration over time, I expect they have planned for it. We'll find out.
What do you feel is important in briefing Congress, the process there? We learned moments ago that Senator Lindsey Graham, who's the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, was told by the president several days ago about this operation, yet we understand that the Gang of Eight was not briefed beforehand. Why is that important?
Well, so look, I think, Lindsey Graham is a confidant of the president. The president can read anybody in he wants. It's his right. He can ask advice of anybody he wants. I do think he should brief the Gang of Eight now. I'm not one of these people that think that every time the president does something, he has to come to Congress and have a floor debate. If we have a floor debate about whether to kill Soleimani, we're not going to be able to kill Soleimani. And so people that are, clutching their pearls right now because we didn't have a floor debate in Congress about this, I think that's disingenuous. But I think now where we're at, brief Congress on what you can. There are a lot of people that leak stuff out of those classified briefings, even in Congress.
The reason that some people think that whether or not there was an imminent threat matters here is because it gets to the legal justification of this action, right? There's no question about what Soleimani has done in the past, but to take this kind of action, which is an action of war, without explicit congressional approval, there would need to be an imminent threat. In other words, a specific attack. Do you want to see the evidence of that specific attack that Iran was planning?
Well, I'd always love to see the evidence of that, sure. And of course, the always question is, what is imminent? Is it an hour? Is it in a week? Whatever that is. But let's think about the basics here. Soleimani was in Iraq. He was in Iraq immediately after this breaching of the U.S. embassy, immediately after our response against those militias, with the leaders of these militias. Soleimani was with the leaders of these militias in Iraq. He was not there to talk about next Thanksgiving plans or anything else. He was there to plan the next attack on the American people. We know that. That's pretty obvious by that fact.
Again, we haven't seen the specific intelligence. We'd love to see as much as we can. I know you would as well. Congressman Adam Kinzinger, always a pleasure to have you on again. Happy New Year.
You bet. Take care.